Hello and welcome back to TJ Johnson. Today I'm going to be talking about the fundamental question of what is a prolific reader? What is this idea, this amalgamation, this plethora of umbrella terms that can mean a prolific reader? Because this is something that's plagued my mind for, well, we'll say 2 months. I talk to help with the betterment of the psychoanalysis of the intellectual mind, the philosopher, and the university student. They're not really directed towards people who read fiction, though, as you can see, I do enjoy a bit of fiction, but these essays aren't really towards those people. I am going to be referencing from a couple books today, a few of them being Jorge Luis Borges' fictions, as well as Albert Camus' personal writings, as well as a few others. And if you would like to read some of these, all of the links will be in the description below. So, this main part of what's a prolific reader, well, at first, when I started writing all this down, because I like to plan these videos out extensively before I talk about this, I thought a prolific reader, prolific just meaning that somebody reads a lot, but anyone can read 100 books in a year. It's going to be difficult, very difficult, but anyone can do that. You don't need any special education. If you know how to read, you can read 100 books in a year. And so I started to funnel it down into the intellectual reader. The prolific reader is somebody that can talk extensively about that subject. Somebody that can read a book and then go to a book club or a signing or a party and say extensively or briefly what happens and whether they understood it or not. And it dawned on me that you can read a lot but not understand it, and so therefore a prolific reader is more somebody that has understood that book, somebody that has read a difficult book. It doesn't even have to be a difficult book even. It can be something, again, like the Albert Camus personal writings. But if you look at that and then can form your own opinion on that story, you are a prolific reader. Because the standard reader, and this is something that I've had to coin, is that there's the standard reader and the prolific reader. The standard reader is just a person who reads profit books, as I've called them. The books which are popular because of social media and they were really written only because it's a quick buck. That's your standard reader. The prolific reader is somebody that will read from a variety of scopes. They will read philosophy, they will read sociology, they will read manifestos, they will be reading fiction, they'll be reading everything. But they won't aim to read everything, but they will understand and form their own opinion. Because books like, I want to say Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a very easy book. People pick it up, they read it, and what is there is there. You read the book, you put it down, and that's it. There are some plot holes and things that you have to think about afterwards, but the majority of the book is spoon-fed to you. It's not a book that you have to put much strenuation into. You can sit back and relax and read it. The book fictions, or any other philosophical book, you have to actually think about what you are reading, what you are writing, and how you are interpreting it. And the people that can then form their own opinion on certain philosophical issues are the people that will go far. Those are the people who have surpassed to a greater level of reading, and they're forming their own opinion. That's what they're doing. They are able to go to a party and state, oh, have you read this? Well, I read that, and Most people believe this happens, but I like to think that it can also be interpreted as blank. I might be wrong, I might be right, but blank is blank. And so, in short, a prolific reader is somebody that can read because of the enjoyment of reading. Somebody who sits down and says, this book I am not reading because it is popular. I'm reading it because I saw it, I have read the blurb, probably read a couple pages in the shop, and it's possibly even a topic that you're not too familiar on. At the moment, I've got a book on fascism and Marxism. Those are two subjects that I do not agree with. I hate them. No, and the people who idolise these substrata of politics, they are wrong. They are looking at it from a wrong angle, but I'm not that well educated on it. And so that is why I'm reading the books. And so the prolific reader will read because of the enjoyment of reading. They will read because of this desire to know more. But also in this second part, I want to talk about how the prolific reader will also read daily. Now, this is something as well people forget, is that to become a better person, to become a better reader, to become a better writer, you have to take part in reading and forming your own opinions and looking for the in-depth, concrete, like structure or the language or certain ways of describing things that they have used. And it really breaks it down to how much you are actually wanting to do this. Because if you wake up in the morning and don't want to read, and you look at your shelf and feel like it's a chore to read, you're in it for the wrong reasons. You are in it either because you romanticise the arts, are in it just for the money, or something of that substrata. The actual prolific reader, writer, the prolific linguistic of intellect should be in it for the betterment of humanity, for the betterment of themselves, for the betterment of the environment that they live in mentally and physically. In the next week or the week after, I will be releasing an essay as well as an accompanying video about monotony and possibly why it's good for you, why it's bad for you, and on why we need this type of structure and chaos in our lives. And it's in this type of thing where reading daily is a good thing, but do it at a certain time. Give yourself half an hour to an hour a day. The moment I wake up, I get a coffee and I read for half an hour, and that will be my philosophical book for the morning. I will not allow myself to read past that half an hour, and so I will then sit down after that half hour of reading, digest what has happened for the rest of the day. So I've started off at this point and thought about what I'm reading for half an hour, and then I have the rest of the day, all the way up till like 11 at night, to think and write and think about what I have read, interpret it in my own form, as well as talk to a friend about it. And then from 8 till 9, so just after I have dinner, I like to read my secondary book, which is usually just a standard book like Les Miserables or Don Quixote, or even things like Coraline. Those books I will read for that hour. But because you find that if you were to just stand in a queue and say, oh, I'll keep the book in my pocket, and when I'm standing in a queue or a line at the train station, I'll pick out the book and read. It sounds great in practice, but in theory, but in practice, it's not the best, because you will sit back and then think, I have 10 minutes till the train arrives. Now that's way more than enough time. In that time I can read 10 to 12 pages of a book. But your brain feels that you need time to ease into the process and then time to ease out of the process. So you end up just saying, oh, I'll do it when I'm on the train, and then picking your phone out and browsing Twitter or something. And so by having this concrete time, you state to yourself whether you do that first thing in the morning or last thing while you're in bed, doesn't matter. As long as you do it at that point in time, the same time every day, okay? And possibly, you know, and there are certain exceptions, like if after work your friend says, hey, do you want to go for a drink? And granted, yes, say yes to a drink, who wouldn't? But you have to think, well, actually, have I been good to myself this week? Have I read enough? Do I feel like I've understood enough that I can just have a day off? And then possibly even stay up an hour later than you usually would to read that hour or half hour or so on, however long you need to read a day. So, the last thing that I want to talk about, and yes, thank you, it's been a very long video for me to make. Usually these are about 10 minutes long. This has been absolutely huge, so thank you for sticking around. I bet I've bored half of you to death. But it's a big conversation and a big thing to talk about, being a prolific reader, and I might have to, because there are certain things like how to remember what you read and how to keep up this everyday reading and how to put this reading into your own work. So those all fall under this umbrella term, so I might make videos about them in the future. But the last thing that I want to talk about is the brief synopsis on how to remember what you have read. So as I've said, in the morning I will read for half an hour, and then I have the rest of the day, but I don't just then put that book, I don't just say, I have read my fictions and I've really liked The Library of Babel, which, granted, if you read this book, if you read any short story from this book, read The Library of Babel. It's good. But don't just put it down and say, that was fun. Cool. No, sit down, get a small notebook. Now I carry a Moleskine with me everywhere. And write The Library of Babel. This infinitesimal, this mammothly stellar, huge library, which is and is not infinite. What does it mean? Is it the juxtaposition of size of man to the size of the universe? Is the library the universe? What lives outside of this library? And you've got to start thinking about your own beliefs in this thing. And you don't have to share these beliefs with anyone, because, granted, you should. And so, even when reading, like, at the moment, my secondary book that I read in the evening is Jack Kerouac's On the Road. And this is a great story. It's a great book, and it flows amazingly. I mean, I went to a cafe today, saw a friend, and I just sat down and just knocked out 50 pages of this in half an hour. I mean, it's so easy to read. But it is an intellectual book. It has meaning behind its madness. Though it seems like a diary on the surface, you look into it, and a lot of it is about just real life problems, and a lot of the characters represent different social structures and different upbringings. I then sit down and say, chapter 10. What happens in chapter 10, and what real life event happened in America in 1945-ish that is in this? And so, but even just writing down like a page on my Moleskine for each chapter, a brief synopsis of what's happening and what I think is happening, has helped me just remember so much more when I'm reading a book. And so, yeah, if you haven't already, we do have an Instagram page. There will be short stories, background videos, as well as updates on the novel and short stories, because I'll be releasing a short story collection within about 5 months or so of the making of this video. And so, that's it from me. I've now got to go and do some reading. I should possibly eat as well. Das Vidania.